Yo, is one a goober with no control over one's own destiny? Whatever the will wills, you know? In some cleft of fatalism, this might be true. Some folks think a little differently, but as philosophies revolve around, the question remains the same. This is a story which seems to start that way at least, and this video is part 1 of 4, so hopefully that isn't an immediate turnoff. You better tell me if it is, little punk, or I'm gonna finagle my way over to you. Ominous text proposes that humankind has no control over their own will. A wrinkly man with dazzlingly blazing locks swings his hammer vigorously while this boy watches. There is a beat-up castle, a cloaked figure, and some meat slaves, or something. In the castle's tavern, a pleb gets more bad news. A man named Griffith became king, thrusting the empire into a dark age. Suddenly, Mullet Lord and his tribe cause trouble. No one dares oppose his chic style. The patrons flee in terror as the ruffians continue being rough. Their victim's decrepit father attempts to stand up for his daughter, but is instantly laid low. Things don't look so good, and the lady is harassed into slurping the grape juice off the table. This guy probably dies. The other thugs fall like autumn leaves to a frigid breeze. Mullet puts up a pathetic final stand and is ultimately tortured into delivering a message. The Black Swordsman is here. The swordsman makes true to his name by slicing the entire tavern in half, along with a would-be assailant, and that is this business concluded. The castle's minister is informed and decides to pull out all the stops to search for the Black Swordsman. The master finds out too. He's probably a freaky demon. Later, the swordsman slumbers peacefully under a crescent moon. However, the sounds of chaos cause him to awaken. His tattoo begins to glow, and demonic voices call out, insisting that his entirety belongs to them. Blood, flesh, and bone. He is then molested by some ghosts, who insist on more of the same. Upon experiencing these specters, more follow, including a slut, a couple of fat guys, and a chandelier made of spiky brains, who infiltrate his gourd with their oppressive flickering. Their master, Griffith, makes a brief appearance as well, but it was just a schizophrenic episode. The lord of the castle partakes in some raw meat slices while his minister attempts to prevent him from getting involved. It doesn't work, and the sickly freak touches the husk of a yellow snake with excitement as he reflects on the joy of slaughtering humans. The minister is powerless to cease his master's involvement. I guess that is the end of this castle town. Here are a few more clips of the evil snake vampire lord having a great time in the streets. Just look at how elated he is. The Black Swordsman makes his presence known as the procession of troops fall to his Van Helsing moves and massive anime blade. The evil is a proclaimed apostle who bears a behelit, and the battle begins with the Black Swordsman instantly becoming injured. He levels the playing field by unloading into his foe, however. These guys are shook. He only needed one eye for that, and takes a tentacle to the face. This guy just keeps getting less appealing by the minute. Why is he so pink? Another tentacle sends the swordsman flying. Sword is out of grasp. Gross. Tentacle time. The big snake wants to gobble sword guy up like an udon noodle, but he unveils his gun hand, which blasts a giga hole into the lizard, allowing our traumatized protagonist to strike the killing blow. The Black Swordsman goes ahead and does his own version of gloating by declaring the resilience of humankind while unloading some more quarrels into Snake Lord's face. Behelit. Now is not the time for contemplation though, and we are whisked back into the swordsman's formative years. Amidst the chaos of battle, Siegmeyer is challenged to a duel by the plucky youth. The Grey Knight, Bezuso, intimidates his foes. The mercenaries are afeared, except for this kid with a mega sword. Bezuso taunts him, but it has no effect. The kid goes nuts. This angers Bezuso, and they go for a rapid exchange of blows. Bezuzu is felled upon the battlefield. That looks like Griffith, and he's got a shriveled tomato necklace. Sometime later, the mercs get paid. The rookie swordsman is offered steady employment from a mustachioed pervert and decides to peace out after engaging in a little brutality. Somewhere in nature, he is spotted by fellow mercenaries under command of Griffith. This guy decides to do some banditry, but is laughed at by Casca. Griffith doesn't care. A spidey sensation tingles the air. Thieves. Dan is annihilated, and so too is Flail Boy. Everyone is shook. Casca is smug, but Griffy sicks her on the kid. Crossbow to the rescue. On Griffith's order, they prepare themselves for combat and exchange strikes. Costco is dehorsed, but not de-angered. They bring the party to the ground level, impressing the plebs with the ferocity of their duel. Casta is overwhelmed, but saved by Grippo, the handsome birdman. They begin to do battle, but Griffith actually knows how to properly displace a blade from horseback and repels the powerful child. The homies celebrate. Corcus is smug, but Casto puts him down. The battle isn't over yet, it would seem. Griffith engages in a staring contest with the feral warrior, incapacitating him with his steely blue gaze. Once victorious, Glippy unleashes his flowing cyan locks. In a fever dream, the swordsman runs from Grabby Hand, the Dominator, while in the nude. It metamorphoses into Satan, or something, after being slashed. Our protagonist child runs into a man named Gambino for assistance, but Gambino is a major D-bag who holds a grudge over the kid for killing him. Some of this horror stuff happens as the rookie asks for forgiveness. He got Casca's bod all wrapped up on him though, so that's cool. Or maybe not. 'Twas a dream, mayhaps? The mercs took him in. It's Griffle and Cascaroni. She inflicts punch on his wound. This guy explains that she actually did wrap herself around him on Griffith's orders for 3 days. Griffith introduces himself, and Gus does the same. They go on a walk through the camp together. The Band of the Hawks camp, a ferocious mercenary company with a special skill for slaughter. Guts is nervous. Congus doesn't get why Griffey spared the life of a skilled warrior who didn't seem like he had anywhere else to be. Rickert tries to explain this to him, but gets his sticks kicked away. Dorcas is just upset that he got a couple of the homies murderized. Pippin doesn't have anything to say about this. Anyway, Guts tries to figure out why Griffith spared his life, while Casca drops some eaves. Griffith simply saw that he was a powerful warrior and wanted to recruit him. He goes on to completely psychologically analyze Guts, seeing straight through his entire existence. Essentially, Guts doesn't feel fulfilled unless he is butchering plebs with his massive swinger. Griffith invites him to join again. Casca is shook. Guts doesn't understand what kindness is, so he rebels by refusing. He goes on to insist that Griffith attacked him in the first place, and therefore they must settle this with a duel. If Griffith wins, he may do as he wishes with Guts, but if Guts reigns supreme, then Griffith will receive a chest wound of equal proportion to the one Guts was given. Grippy agrees. Casca tries to intervene, but fails. Guts goes for the attack, but the results are to be determined in the next episode. Griffith's dex build is much too formidable for Guts' raw strength, as his onslaught of attacks is deftly repelled. Corcus attempts to intervene, but Casca says no. She's insistent. Guts is wounded a few more times, but adapts his strategy. Griffith goes ahead and hippity hops on tops though, securing his win, or so we are led to believe. Guts uses Bite. It's fairly effective. They roll down a slope and engage in a battle of fists. Grillip knows his judo well, however, and Gus is felled. The mercs are smug. The two warriors have a homoerotic staring contest, as Griffith states victoriously that Guts belongs to him now. Casca is conflicted by Griffith's unusual behavior and sulks through a field. Later, some castle fellas discuss the Band of the Hawks' indomitable presence. Guts is peeved by his loss, reflecting on Griffith's prowess, when Dorcas arrives to conduct an assassination. Unfortunately for them, Guts was brooding instead of napping. Casca prevents their untimely deaths by ordering Corcus to retreat. He tries to imply that she is a hoe and almost dies, but ultimately knows when to peace out. Guts thanks her, but Casca only operates on Griffith's orders. Guts wistfully stares at his massive sword and eventually just sleeps with it. Early in the morning, the Band of the Hawk gather to perform a night raid on a besieging army's camp. Griffith wants Guts to act as a rearguard on their retreat. Everyone is shook, believing that he will fail such an important and challenging task. Borpus is smug. They wade through a river to prevent being discovered. The ambush conditions are perfect, which Guts comments on. Knife Guy ices a complication, and they proceed to the supply camp, moisturized and unbothered. The Band of the Hawk emerges from the forest in force, annihilating the enemy with their surprise attack, thrashing the enemy's base and skedaddling back into the night. Guts is in awe of their efficiency and begins his task as the rearguard. Griffith returns to report to his employers, then immediately goes to check on Guts, who fulfilled his duties immaculately. Here he is now, doing a great job. His horse gets blasted before he's able to make it back to the castle, but the homies arrive to evacuate their golden boy. The enemy cavalry overextends and receives the spicy end of a cannon barrage. Guts makes this face in response. The victorious army celebrates their win with a lavish feast. While discussing the Band of the Hawks' heroics, Guts decides to brood instead of party though. He reflects on the flawlessness of Griffith's tactics, but is interrupted by soldiers who wish to give their respect. They invite him to party, but Guts is stubborn. Pippin arrests him for being shy and deposits him in front of the company, who accept Guts with open arms. He still doesn't understand kindness, but isn't resisting anymore at least. Casca and Dongus brood into the evening. The rest of the gang partied hard until morning. Guts slithered back into his crenellation of gloom. He's approached by Knife Guy, who attempts to wrest some thoughts on the band from Guts. Guts responds by stating that this mercenary company feels different from the others. Everyone works together well. Knife Guy figures that Griffith probably unites them with his charisma. Guts and him continue to discuss Griffith, who has a lofty goal of some kind. Costco emerges to gather Guts for Griffith. Knife Guy believes that Gut will like it here. So anyway, Griffith is just completely nude, even though he specifically called for Guts. He even invites him to join in on the homoerotic debauchery. Guts only enjoys killing though. They battle vigorously, then laugh it off afterwards. That's when Guts spots Gribble's wrinkly tomato necklace, which he reveals is a behelit, the egg of the king. It is said that once one possesses this egg, they are destined to rule the world in exchange for their flesh and blood. Guts gives it a good look over, but it rejects him, or something. Griffith reveals that he has no idea how it works, which doesn't really bode well. Guts moves the conversation forward by asking why Griffith saved him again. Obviously, he saw that Guts is a capable warrior and needs his strength. Griffith shouldn't need much more explanation than that, but goes ahead and states that he wants to become king one day. It needs to have Guts be his right-hand man. And now it's siege time. Guts is still hung up on Griffith's grand ambitions and has an existential flashback while charging towards a fortress. He used to be a weapon boy for some punk, but now he is the weapon, Gambino. Guts refuses to use a proper-sized sword and gets beat up constantly by Gambibi. He was apparently born from a corpse, which is a sign of bad luck that presumably resulted in Gambino's wife's death. Here he is in his first battle, getting his first kill, almost slurping on dirt, getting paid big money, promptly being robbed, watching Gambino being exploded by a cannon, getting paid big money again, and being abused evermore. Gambino is admired by these goons, then yells at them for showing respect. Guts broods during a thunderstorm. Gambino. He's here on revenge duty for Guts causing such a havoc with his ill-fated birth. He goes feral, giving Guts his iconic nose scar, but Gambino is ultimately run through. Guts is shook. Some of the late-night poker club investigate the clatter, finding a bloody scene. Guts doesn't know anything about anything other than fighting, so he gets froggy and hops to a different pond. Guts is dazed and confused while under pursuit, which eventually gets him blasted into a ravine. He awakens sometime later under the light of a full moon, butt deep in a puddle. Guts wanders aimlessly through the wilderness, wounded and shell-shocked. Some dogs figure he looks pretty delicious, but Guts insists that he isn't with his sword. He screams. Things haven't really changed since those days. Later, the band of the cock littered the ground with corpses. Griffith monologues about the value of life and his own place in that system of values. Guts does this. Griffith basically admits that they're best friends. Richard stealthily ices Guts with a sneak attack. He arrived to congratulate him on his promotion to Raider Commander. They become official homies. Pippin tries to fit through the doggy door, but is much too large. Casca broods by starlight. God recites some poems about wielding a sword to have hope in an endless war between two countries, fueling the rise of the Band of the Hawk. 3 years later, some heavy cavalry units are annihilating their opponents with shock tactics. This regal-looking guy is concerned. Gus doesn't give a hoot, though. Look at him go, besting all the best out there. The Band of the Hawk, reapers of the battlefield, led by the White Hawk Griffith, have arrived. Their calculated charge turns the Black Ram cavalry into ash. Griffith is especially cool and graceful, causing the enemy to retreat and receiving notice from the king. Griffith flirts with Guts. Cascaroni is jealous. Later, Guts' underlings praise him for being a cold-eye MFer. Big Sis Casca interrupts to converse with Gus. She scolds him for being brash during the battle by charging in alone for the main force. Guts apologizes, but this isn't the first or last time. Casca understands that fact and calls him a mad dog who doesn't care about his men. Guts retaliates. Griffith breaks them up with this crazy zoom shot. Casca scolds Griffith for being too soft on Guts, leaves, then encounters Corcus, who is eager to help do shady things. He dies instead. Griffith comments on the frequent arguing, but Guts is still stuck on Casca, proclaiming that he doesn't care about the soldiers under his command. He does care, and he has changed somewhat. Grippy has a flashback to when they met, then pieces out. Guts apologizes, but Griffith insists that he not worry about anything, as he always accounts for Guts' rash moves and his battle plans. In a church, Griffith is granted knighthood for his services during the war. The nobles aren't too sure about this decision. Dorcas is elated though. Casca interrupts to explain that they need to be careful from now on. Having evolved from mercs to regulars, there is no excuse to be bored. Guts skipped out on the ceremony to do training. This guy doesn't seem to approve of any of this nonsense. Guts looks wistfully at his massive sword. Somewhere in a forest, Knife Guy scouted an enemy base, and Griffith manifests one of his iconic, crazy strategies. Dongus gets feisty at Guts after the meeting, but Casca is insistent upon keeping their group domesticated. Guts essentially actually just got yelled at for no reason, so he leaves, which makes Casca more enraged. Her wrath is quelled by Griffith, though. Here are a few shots of the enemy base, with all the supplies Griffith is gonna pillage. Sir Addon, leader of the Blue Whale Heavy Assault Knights, is furious about being stationed so pathetically in ambush. The commander is informed, then doubly informed, then triply informed. The Band of the Hawk gets in extremely easily. Addon goes to join the battle, but after seeing Guts obliterate 3 dudes in like 0.3 seconds, he skedaddles. Griffith figures it's time to make a charge to the main target. Guts spots the fleeing captain and a little trickle of smoke emanating from the storehouse. He goes to inform Griffith, which provokes Casca's ire, but Griffith gets the news and orders a retreat. Just in time, too. Cascaroni makes sure to wear her clown nose. Addon is smug and withdrawals. Thanks to Guts' quick battle sense, there were no casualties. He nods. Casca makes this face. I guess their mission was a success then? Casca struggles to thank Guts for his heroics and peeps Griffith creepily smiling at them. Meanwhile, Addon proudly reports his victory to the enemy general, who is understandably infuriated. Their governor isn't too upset about the loss of their supply base until hearing the name Band of the Hawk. On the other side of the war, the king decides to grant Griffith the honor of leading the next offensive siege. This guy again is upset, but that doesn't matter. This shady looking egg seems sus. Time for siege. Here are a couple quick shots of the battlement. The fortress is pretty imposing. Griffith fondles his creepy necklace, and Guts begins to charge towards a wall full speed ahead on horseback for some reason. It's Clutie. It would appear that the Band of the Hawk breached the outer wall. This guy arrives to say that there's a Giga soldier tangling with Guts' battalion who is preventing them from taking control of the keep. Dorcas doubts. Knife Guy, who I've just now noticed is named Judo, cryptically utters the name Zod. A legendary elderly warrior capable of slaughtering thousands, whose prowess in battle, ability to resurrect, and long lifespan gained him the title Zod the Immortal. Ricky is insulted for stating fairy tales as fact, but he releases his wrath upon Corcus. It is time. Guts must be restrained to prevent him from charging to his death. 50 of his soldiers were sent in, but never returned, and now Guts is upset. Suddenly, Dildos emerges from the doom crevice, injured and desperate. The brave soldier utters Zod with his last breaths. Everyone is shook. Guts knows what he must do, and goes to settle things alone. Upon entering Zod's menacing cave, he finds his opponent's interior decorating skills to be subpar. He makes this face while wading through the swathes of valiant warriors he once knew. A death cry calls Guts to the main chamber, where he sees a delicately stacked pile of heads and a vicious gorilla. I guess that's probably Zod the Immortal. He has a meat skewer. This enrages Guts, and he goes for a charging attack. Zod flicks him away like a pestering insect, then changes the shutter speed on his eyeballs. They look at each other. Zod compliments Guts, and they begin to battle once more. After a furious exchange, Guts is sent flying. Meanwhile, Griffith decides to go after Guppy. Zod is elated by Guts' moves, but Guts is too busy vigorously strategizing to notice. He takes a stance, which gives Zood joy, after which their duel is settled with a single strike. Guts slices Zod's rune scimitar in twain, following up with a calculated aortic jab. Too bad Zod is an actual demon. He metamorphoses into a Giga Cow while complimenting Guts. This only causes him to quiver though. Zod is all riled up now that he found a once in 300 years opponent. Guts remains in a daze after facing such a monster, but manages to dodge a couple of Zod's determined charges. Unfortunately, on top of being an absolute unit, Zod also has 4 tough horns, which deflect Guts' attack and send him flying again. Zod is disappointed slightly, but grateful for the battle. He squeezes Guts in delight, but is halted by a barrage of crossbow fire. Griffith has arrived. The soldiers are shook. Another volley is loose, but to no effect. Gripio is shook. Zod is peeved and goes on the offensive. His visage spooks the plebs. Meanwhile, Corcus is nervous. Ricky believes, though. Casca figures they should just wait. These guys get the Kool-Aid slapped out of him, which causes Griffith to call for a retreat. He valiantly runs to Guts' side, but Zod has them cornered. The two strategize briefly, then split up to cover more ground. This confuses Zod, and they are able to land a couple of effective strikes. Griffith tries to take the opportunity to skedaddle, but gets tentacled hard into a pillar. Zod is even more elated by finding another worthy specimen to dismember, and promptly whacks Guts with his severed arm. Zod peeps Griffy's egg, and mumbles some some esoteric demon stuff to himself before breaking into a sinister cackle. He punches the ceiling, which causes Casca to sprint full speed into the cave. Zod explains to Guts that he must leave due to some demon business and will unfortunately not have another chance to fight him. Before piecing out, he tells Guts that when Griffith's ambition crumbles, his death will follow shortly after. Zod pops out some rad wings and yeets himself into the distance. This only confuses Guts further, but he contemplates on Zod's words a bit. The homies show up to hug the living. Griffith is probably unconscious, which makes Casca go feral with rage. She projects her wrath towards Guts. He's confused, and that is the end of part 1 of the 1997 version of Berserk. Hey, thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, comment, and all that, if you feel like it. I have a Patreon where you can give me coins. You don't have to, but I figure I should at least tell people about it. That's it for the outro, I think. Bye.